Welcome back to Logic Bender. You've all heard it a million times before that Martin Luther King didn't have an exit wound.
And the person I was just describing who got shot, who was a community leader by a 30-06 with no exit wound, it's actually Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was shot by a 30-06. There was no exit wound.
Yeah.
More on that, but Viva, I want you to weigh in.
Well, when I hear people say this, a 30-06 would always leave an exit wound. It's impossible, inconceivable that it wouldn't. And then I say Martin Luther King Jr.
Which, by the way, folks, again, all you got to do is look at Martin Luther King. He was shot in the face with a 30-06. He was shot at 65 yards, less than half the distance of where Tyler Robinson was, because that's who shot him, but less than half the distance. And we didn't have an exit wound.
But I'm here to tell you that's not true, that Martin Luther King Jr. did have an exit wound. And in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I know that. So let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to get out of the way immediately is that the bullet's final resting place was indeed inside Martin Luther King's body. However, there was still an exit wound. And I know that sounds insane at first, but the reason is because after hitting his mandible, the bullet briefly exited the body, but due to the trajectory and the angle of his body, the bullet re-entered through Martin Luther King's neck and it didn't exit again. So there was an exit wound, just not two. If you're still having trouble picturing this, imagine someone instinctively putting their hand out to try and block a bullet, and then the bullet going right through their hand and into their chest where it comes to a rest. Well, there wouldn't be an exit wound in the torso, but there would be one in the hand. That's exactly what happened with MLK, except instead of his hand, it was his mandible. The bullet went through his mandible, exited his body, and then re-entered through the neck where it didn't exit again. And it makes perfect sense that it wouldn't exit a second time because it lost so much velocity from going through his mandible. Alright, so how do I know this? Well, because in 1976, Congress formed the House Select Committee on Assassinations to examine the JFK and MLK shootings, and it was their findings that determined there was an exit wound. This is the government's official national archives where we can read the committee's report. And when we scroll on down here, all right, here we see that the panel concluded the bullet fractured Dr. King's jaw, exited the lower part of the face, and re-entered the body in the neck area. You cannot re-enter something you haven't previously exited. If the trajectory wasn't such that the neck was in the bullet path, the bullet would have remained out of his body after it exited the first time. But the neck was in the path, so the bullet re-entered the body and didn't have enough velocity to exit a second time. But right about now, you may be wondering how it is that this wasn't discovered in the original autopsy, and the answer might surprise you. The reason is because they didn't dissect the path of the bullet during the autopsy. Yeah, I shit you not. The doctor who performed that autopsy was Dr. Francisco, and it flat out says right here that the committee panel determined he had not dissected the path of the bullet during the autopsy. It then goes on to say Dr. Michael Bodden, chief medical examiner for New York City and spokesman for the autopsy panel, testified that this decision resulted entirely from Dr. Francisco's concerns about not causing any unnecessary deformity to the body and his sensitivity to the treatment of the dead. Well, there you have it. Unfortunately, MLK not having an exit wound is one of those things where you hear something repeated enough times it becomes true even when it's not. And it is not true. While I certainly don't recommend anyone to rely on AI for their research, even it knows Martin Luther King had an exit wound. Alright, that's going to do it for this one. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please consider liking and subscribing or hitting the follow button if you're watching this on X. Also try and help me spread the word about this so people will finally stop saying MLK didn't have an exit wound. And making it to the end on this video was far easier than my other videos, but still, if you made it to the end, you're a total badass and I thank you. Later.